Hello, my dear students. Today we are going to critically appreciate one of the poems, Thoughts in a Garden, written by Andrew Marvell. Now, Andrew Marvell is a metaphysical poet, as we all know. Thus, you will find all the unique features of a metaphysical poetry in this particular poem, because you will find transcendentalism, you will find something which is beyond this physical world, of course, which is the special unique feature of the metaphysical poetry, because Marvell is using this theme of love, but it's not love towards any lady or any normal love affair that one must have, but it is beyond that. It is the love for nature, the love for trees, the solitude and the peace one gets when someone is close to nature. So that is the basic gist of the poem, because Marvell is talking about the uniqueness or the peace or the solitude or the bliss which one feels when one is in the company of nature. So because he is in a garden, and that's why all these thoughts are coming into his mind, thoughts in a garden. Now, plus there are some other unique features. One is the complex symbols that you will find here. It's not very easy to comprehend, and there are layers of meaning and so many references that we have to look to. And another thing is about the structure of the poetry. So while talking about the structure of the poetry, the poem has got 9 stanzas. All the poem is written in iambic pentameter, and all the stanzas have got 8 lines each. And these 8 lines are basically written in rhymed couplets. So you can say that there are 4 rhymed couplets in each stanza, because you see 2 lines are matching. So the rhyme scheme, you can say, is A, B, B, C, C, D, D, and in that way for every stanza. And all these stanzas are thus composed of 4 rhymed couplets, 8 lines each, and altogether there are 9 stanzas. So this was all about the structure and the background of the poetry. And now let's begin with the detailed, in-depth analysis of the poetry. So this is the poem we have in front of us, and you see, this is the first stanza. How vainly men themselves amaze to win the palm, the oak or bays, and their incessant labours see, crowned from some single herb or tree, whose short and narrow wedged shade does prudently their toils upbraid, while all flowers and all trees do close to weave the garlands of repose. So here is talking about the materialistic pleasures that men tend to seek in their lifetime. But poet is saying that all these materialistic pleasures are nothing but vain, are of no use, they are futile. Men seek themselves and they try to amaze themselves by winning these various awards, or you can say the various attributes one can get in the lifetime. And for that he is referring to three plants. One is the palm tree, another is the oak, and the third one is the bay, which is also called as laurel. So these 3 plants were earlier used as the symbols for military award, civic award, and poetic talents respectively. And in earlier times, when someone was to be awarded, what happened that some leaves and stems from these plants would be taken, and a coronet would be weaved, a kind of crown from these plants, and that would be placed on the people's head to honor them for their virtues. So palm represented the highest military award, oak represented the civic award, and bay, which is also the laurel plant, it represented the poetic talents. So people tend and work hard to gain these awards, to gain these honors, and they work incessantly, they work too much. Incessant is a lot of effort they put, a lot of labor they put into winning these awards, into winning these honors, and they want themselves to be crowned from this single herb or tree. One may win a palm or an oak or a bay, whatever it may be. But they will win one single herb. They will be crowned, be it if they are very great in military work, they will be awarded with the coronet of the palm tree. But that's just one single tree, one single herb that you are being crowned with, and it is not even going to provide you shade, whose short and narrow-wedged shade does prudently their toils upbraid. So whatever toils, whatever effort, toil means the hard work one does to win these awards, are of no use, are futile. They're going to end someday or the other. They are not going to even provide you shade. These coronets are not even going to provide you proper shade when you are wearing them. So what is more important? More important is to be among these flowers and plants and trees. While all these flowers and all trees, when they close together, when they come together, they weave the garlands of repose. They create the atmosphere of rest. They create the atmosphere of solitude. They create the atmosphere when one person will find peace. So when all the trees are together, means just like a place when one is in a garden where there are so many trees. So all these trees, when come together, when huddled together, they create lot of shade, they create lot of rest like situation where men can repose, where men can relax, where they can have all the peace that they want. So that is more important in life, rather than trying to win these plants, rather than trying to win over materialistic pleasures. Although he's referring to only these three virtues, but this signifies much deeper. It signifies that any materialistic pleasure a person is seeking, be it he is trying to capture territories, or be it is trying to gain some money, or whatever it is, or or to become famous in life, whatever you achieve, whatever you gain, but that is short lived. After some time it's going to be lost. After some time no one is going to actually remember you for longer amount or longer duration of time. But the peace you will find in between these trees, among these trees, is which is going to give you a lifetime of happiness. So that is the first stanza. Let's move on to the second stanza. Fair, quiet, have I found thee here? And innocence thy sister dear. Mistaken long, I sought you then in busy companies of men. You sacred plants, if here below, only among the plants will grow. Society is all but rude to this delicious solitude. So he further goes on to compare the company of plants with the company of people. And he says that he has been able to find quietness here. And he says fair, quiet. He is attributing the personality of or he is attributing the qualities of a real person to this term quiet, and that's why he is addressing to quiet as a lady, referring to her as fair, as one who is beautiful, and he is using the capital letter Q, which also signifies that it is referring to quiet as a name of some lady maybe, and thus the figure of speech used here is personification, and he's saying that he is personifying quietness and saying that quietness is a lady which he found here only. And plus, along with quietness, he also found quietness's sister, who is the innocence. So innocence and quiet, these are two ladies which he is personifying. Actually, he is personifying the qualities of quiet and innocence, and referring them to as two ladies who he found only here, and they both are sisters according to him. So quiet and your sister innocence, I found you both here. Earlier he was mistaken, he was wrong, and he tried to seek them in busy companies of men. He used to go around people, in groups of people, in friend circles, and try to find the innocence and quietness. But that was not possible, because people are not as giving as plants are. So he says that only sacred plants can grow below plants. Only plants can help the development of other plants, smaller plants beneath them. But men, they won't. they will try to pull you back. If you are seeking for solitude, of course you are not going to get solitude from people. You are only going to get some kind of remarks or some kind of backstabbing from people. You are never ever going to be nourished by them. You are never ever going to be supported by them. And quiet and innocence, oh, never ever. So innocence is not the nature of men. And of course, if there are too many people there in busy company of men, of course there will be no quietness and no solitude. So he was mistaken and he was trying to find them in the company of people, but no, it's only in the garden, it's only among the nature that Marvell is able to find quiet and innocence. So in society, you will never find such delicious solitude, such solitude which is full of, which is worthy enough to be called delicious. People are rude, society is rude, is not that giving and not that empathetic towards solitudeness, inner peace, inner innocence, inner quietness, whatever you will only find among nature. No white nor red was ever seen so amorous as this lovely green. Fond lovers, cruel as their frame, cut in these trees their mistress's name. Little, alas, they know or heed how far these beauties hers exceed. Fair trees, wherever your barks I wound, no name shall but your own be found. So the poet is saying that neither white nor red color is so charming and so amorous as this lovely green color. So green color of course signifies nature. Nothing is as amorous, as beautiful as the lovely green color of the nature, whereas white and red colors signify other desires of this life. Red basically signifies passion and lust. So because in the next lines he is going to talk about love and lust. So he's saying that all those other colors, be it the color of love or friendship or anything, white generally signifies peace. So all those other colors are not as amorous, as loving as the green color. And what do cruel lovers do? The lovers who are full of passion, and when the love is in the early phase, they are so much in their flame, in their passion, in that burning desire and quest for love, that they generally cut the names of their mistresses on the barks of the tree, which can be seen in any, if you go to a practical experiment or a practical example of it. So you will see at many beautiful monuments also, you will find names of lady lovers, and lovers would be cut, a heart would be made and their names would be engraved there. Similar things have been done on the barks of the trees also, on the branches of the trees. So he is saying that what these cruel lovers do, they cut the mistress's name, write the name of the mistresses on these trees by wounding these trees. While they are making this mark, while they are naming the trees, of course they are making a kind of cut there, they are wounding the bark of the trees. Little do they understand, it is beyond their comprehension. They do not heed to the fact, heed means to hear or to notice this fact, that the beauties of their mistresses, the lady loves whose name they are writing on the tree, is nothing when compared to the beauty of the trees. Their beauties are far less, and the beauties of the trees far exceed when compared to the beauty of the mistresses. So fair trees, and then he refers to the trees. Now again he is personifying trees here. He is talking to them, he is addressing them. It is also a kind of apostrophe where he is saying, fair trees, wherever your barks I won't. So if by any chance I happen to write a name on the bark of any tree, what will I do? No name shall but your own be found. So if he is going to write by any chance, perhaps maybe, if he is engraving any kind of name on the bark of a tree, it would be the tree's name itself that he is going to carve out there. So for him, the trees are more dear than any lady whose love one refers to. So the lady's love is nowhere ever to the mark of the love he has for nature, he has for trees. And then we move on to the next stanza. When we have run our passion's heat, love hither makes its best retreat. The gods that mortal beauty chase still in a tree did end their race. Apollo hunted Daphne so, only that she might laurel grow, and Pan did after Syrinx speed, not as a nymph, but for a reed. So again, he is saying that the passion, because earlier he was talking about the love when people are full of passion. So that passion is generally at the beginning of the love, and then it ends. The similar passion, the similar heat will not be felt after the relationship has gone for quite some time. So he says that when the passion, when the heat is run off, when it is ebbing down, when it is coming down, it makes its best retreat in the lap of nature. The love hither is here, and the love hither makes his best retreat. Where? Here means here in the lap of nature, here towards nature, here towards these trees. And why? He is giving two examples for that. He says that the gods also, when in their passion, when in their heat, they try to chase someone, they try to run after some lady love. What happened? It also was turned, or it also ended into becoming a tree. And here he is giving these two examples. He says that when Apollo hunted Daphne, she was turned into a laurel. When Pan went after Syrinx, she was a nymph, but she was changed into a reed. So when gods that mortal beauty chase, so these are the two gods he is referring to, god Apollo and god Pan, and he is saying that they were gods, but they were in love with a mortal lady, in love with someone who was not God himself, who was a mortal being. And they tried to chase. Both of these ladies were not in love with either Apollo or Pan, and they were after the ladies, and they wanted to hunt them down. So they came chasing after, they came running after them. And what happened? Still in a tree did end their race. So that race, which was the hunting down of the ladies, that ended by changing themselves into a tree. So the mythological story goes here as thus, that Apollo, when he fell in love with Daphne, he was running after her, but Daphne was not in love with Apollo. So she ran and she prayed to gods, and she was turned into the laurel plant. The laurel plant that we referred to in the first stanza. And similar thing is with Pan. Apollo is the sun god, and similar thing is with Pan. Pan was another god of animals basically, and he is a demigod, not totally a god. So when Pan was in love with Syrinx is a nymph. Syrinx was a nymph, so she was also mortal. She was also not a god herself, and she was also not in love with Pan. So Pan tried to hunt her down, and while running away from Pan, she turned herself into the reeds. So in both the places, in laurel and reed, both the ladies were turned, and the passion of the love ended by turning into trees. It was never fulfilled. The love of the god was also not fulfilled. So he is giving these two examples to prove his point. So we move on to the next stanza. What wondrous life in this I lead. Ripe apples drop about my head. The luscious clusters of the vine upon my mouth do crush their wine. The nectarine and curious speech into my hands themselves do reach, stumbling on melons as I pass, ensnarled with flowers, I fall on grass. So now he is talking about the beauty of the nature and the surroundings when he is in the garden, and he is saying that he is leading a wondrous life. There are ripe apples all dropping about his head, so it is in his reach, he can just have as many apples as he can want. And then there are clusters of vine. The vineyards are there all around him, and these vine are of course the vineyards or of grapes. That's by saying that whenever he wants, he can crush these grapes, and we know that from grapes wine is made generally. So whenever he wants, he can crush the grapes upon his mouth and have the nectar from the grapes, can have their wine directly into his mouth. So they are luscious clusters of wine, delicious clusters of full of juicy grapes are there, and from these vineyards he can have as many or as much wine as he wants. And then there are another plants that he is mentioning, other fruits that he is mentioning. He is mentioning nectarine and curious peach. So there are so many juicy. Nectarine also refers to as juicy, or nectarine also refers to as something which is the eternal drink, kind of nectar. So he is getting all these juicy fruits here. There is peach, there is grapes, there is apples all around, and there are so many melons that when he is walking around, the melons are all covering the ground, and he stumbles upon the melons as he pass and falls on the grass there, where everywhere there is flower all around, ensnarled with flowers, everywhere covered with flowers. He falls on the ground. So when he is falling down also, it's not that he is feeling any pain or something of that sort, but he is falling on flowers all around, and he is enjoying the beauty of or the heavenly bliss that he is enjoying in this garden, where all the flowers and fruits are at his hand and at his disposal. So from these stanzas till now, we have seen that the poet has been infused with the beauty of nature, and he is so mesmerized with all what he has all around in the garden. But now we move on to the next stanza, where he makes even some more deeper probing statements. So let's start with it. Meanwhile, the mind from pleasureless withdraws into its happiness. The mind, that ocean were each kind, does straight its own resemblance find, yet it creates, transcending these, far other worlds and other seas, annihilating all that's made to a great thought in a green shade. So you see, till now the poet was enjoying the happiness that he was having around in the garden. But then suddenly he says that, our mind is infused with so many thoughts that at same instance you can have multiple thoughts going on in your mind. So when he is in the garden, he is enjoying, he is at its best, and then suddenly the mind has its own way of functioning, and somehow it withdraws into the happiness and starts creating other pictures or starts imagining other things. So meanwhile, the mind from pleasureless, so the pleasure that he was having, from that it withdraws, it gets into its own happiness, it withdraws from its own happiness, and it goes on to think some about something else, about something which is different from the natural world that he's talking about. And then he says that how mind works. Mind is just like an ocean, just in the way when an ocean is such a large entity that it's endless, you cannot find the place where it ends, so you can say that it is everlasting. In the same way, the mind is endless, and there is no limits to the mind. So mind is just like an ocean. He is giving the figure of speech simile here, where he is comparing the mind to the ocean, and he says that each mind is like an ocean of its own kind, and its straight resemblance is in the form of ocean, and it can create so many thoughts in it. So when he withdraws from the pleasure of the garden, he starts thinking, his mind starts creating different mental images, and it creates, transcending these, far other worlds and other seas. So you see, mind is capable of creating so many other worlds. You are sitting in this world in a garden, and your mind is capable of creating multiple gardens and multiple seas from that single thought. So he says that the mind transcended these thoughts transcending is something which is beyond this world. So obviously the mind created something in its thought, making we can say imaginary castles out of his mind, and he imagined many other worlds and many other seas. And then suddenly he thinks that, okay, what am I thinking? I was in the nature, amidst nature. I was enjoying the trees and the pleasure of the garden. And then suddenly, why my mind is creating all these different worlds and seas, and so many other thoughts are coming in the mind. And then he annihilates all that is made. Annihilating is kind of destroying. So he suddenly shuns up all the thoughts that are coming into his mind. He annihilates whatever he has made up in his mind, and he returns back to the green thought in a green shade. So he returns back to nature. He comes back to the same thought that was earlier in his mind, which was more pleasing. So again he wants to say in the stanza that any or whatever thing you create, you imagine, or you enjoy, nothing is everlasting and nothing is anything when compared to the greeny thought in the green shade that he's having now. So moving on to the next stanza. Here at the mountain's sliding foot, or at some fruit tree's mossy root, casting the body's west aside, my soul into the boughs does glide. There like a bird it sits and sings, then wets and combs its silver wings, until prepared for longer flight, waves in its plumes the various light. So again he comes back to the garden. Again the picture we are getting is of the garden, and he is saying that he is in the garden sitting near the foot of the fountain. Maybe there is a fountain amidst the garden, and or while sitting beneath a tree's root, near the tree's root, and the root is a kind of swampy, mossy, full of mosses. And at that time what happens that he is so much engrossed in the garden and the beauty of the garden that he feels that his body is just like a vest, just like a cloth. So it is a metaphor that he is talking about here, where he is comparing the body to a vest or a cloth. So he is saying that the body's vest he casted aside, so he kept aside the body, and what was more important, what is beyond this body. So see, these are the metaphysical elements that we are getting. In the earlier stanza he was talking about transcending thoughts, so something beyond the physical world, and in this stanza he is talking about the soul and the body. He is comparing to a cloth, and he is saying that he has cast aside the body, and the soul, which is important, which is the main quest for everyone. The soul is gliding, and the soul is coming out of the body as if, and it's there on the branches. Boughs means the branches. So soul is there gliding on the branches of the tree, just like a bird. There like a bird. So he is comparing the soul to a bird. Again this is a simile where he is saying that soul is like a bird, whereas in the earlier line it was body, he was comparing to the vest, but it was a metaphor there because no as and like was used. Here he is using like, that's why the soul is comparing it to bird, and say and here it is a simile, and he says that the soul, just like a bird who flies from one branch to another branch, in the same way the soul is flying from one branch to another branch, gliding there, sitting there and singing there, enjoying itself. So not only the body which is enjoying, not only the senses which is enjoying in the garden, but now he is coming to the very core of human existence, that is the soul is also enjoying. It's sitting on the branches of the tree and singing. And the soul is obviously not any just common bird. So the soul is retting and combing its silver wings. So the soul is silvery in color. The bird he is imagining, which is his soul, is a silver bird. It has got silver wings and it is combing its wings and is preparing itself for much longer flights, and waves in its plumes the various lights. The bird is again a glowful bird. It's glowing all around, and in its plumes, the feathers of the bird. So in the plumes as if the lights are waving in the plumes of the bird. So the bird is silver in color and it is all giving different kinds of hues, because you see again he is imagining the soul to be a very beautiful bird which is silver in color, and lots of different colors of lights are coming out of the feathers from the bird. And then moving on to the next stanza. Such was that happy garden state, while man there walked without a mate. After a place so pure and sweet, what other help could yet be meet? But that was beyond a mortal's share, to wander solitary there. Two paradises there were in one, to live in paradise alone. So he says that, see, he was enjoying the garden, and he was saying that it was such a happy state when he was in the garden compared to the similar state when man was without a mate walking in the garden which was similar to this garden, which was so pure and sweet, just like this garden, before any mate came there. So what he is talking about here, he is talking about paradise. He is talking about the garden which was before human beings existed. It was the garden actually he is going back into the mythology. He is talking about the garden, Eden garden, the garden of the paradise, which was made by God himself. And the first man, that is Adam, the first man, when he created the first man, he brought him to or presented him with the Eden garden and told him to live there. And when the man was alone there without a mate, he walked there without a mate, means without till the time, because it is generally considered that God first made Adam and he left him in the garden, and after that he created Eve. So before he created Eve, before the coming of the female, when male was all alone, when Adam was all alone, when he was in the garden without the lady, without Eve, that was the most happy state, because he was alone. See, earlier only in the stanzas he had explained it that he was trying to find solitude in busy company of men, but he could never find it there. So nature is bliss, but alone. And that's why he's saying that this state, when here he is alone in the garden, can be compared to the state of Adam when he was alone without a mate in the Eden garden. And that place was so pure and so sweet, and there was nothing else. No other thing could be compared to, nothing else could meet up to what was the bliss what Adam was having there. No mortal could share that thing. No mortal, because obviously men who are here in this world generally are surrounded with so many people around them that they can never ever enjoy the beauty that Adam had felt in the Garden of Eden. And the most important thing was that he was wandering there solitary. There was no one with him. He was alone all there, and that being alone in the garden made it more important, made it more we can say powerful place to be alone and full of innocence. So he says that it was not just one paradise. The Eden garden was a paradise, of course, made by God, but it was not just one paradise. It was two paradises there. Two paradises were there in one, to live in paradise alone. Why? Because till the time Eve came, till that time, as if it was the bonus, the double paradise that Adam was living in. One, the paradise, of course, which the God created for him, the Garden of Eden, and plus another, the bliss of being alone, the bliss of Eve not being there, the bliss of no mate, no female, no opposite sex being there with him. So, again we want to point out this fact that Marvell is very assertive of the fact that you can only enjoy the bliss of nature or being happy in a garden when you are alone there. So coming to the last stanza of the poem. How well the skillful gardener drew of flowers and herbs this dial knew, where from above the milder sun does through a fragrant zodiac run. And as it works, the industrious bee computes its time as well as we. How could such sweet and wholesome hours be reckoned but with herbs and flowers? So he's saying that you see, the gardener who has created this garden was a skillful gardener. He was full of his various skills, and he has arranged the garden, arranged the flowers and herbs in such a way that the garden makes like a sundial. It is in the shape of a sundial, and that's why when the sun is above the head or when the sun is milder, whatever, you can tell the time. You can tell the time when the sun is running through the fragrant zodiacs which are arranged in the garden. So again, zodiac can be the various fragrances associated with each zodiac sign. Zodiacs are of course the constellations, the stars, which are referred to as zodiac. Be it the sunshine and the moonshine, which are calculated from this zodiac signs. So he says that we can very well, by sitting in the garden, tell the time because of the skillful gardener. And just like the industrious bees, the bees are very busy person. You see, they keep on their hard work without any stopping, without any hindrance. So the bees, when they keep on working, when the just like the way they compute their time, just like the way they tell their time, in the same way, while sitting in the garden, we can also tell our time. And now you see, this is a simple meaning of these lines, but when you go deeper into these lines, you see, just earlier he was talking about the Garden of Eden, and he was talking about the garden which was created by God himself, and then he talked that it was blissful when Adam was alone there. And then what happened when we go into the mythological story? When Eve came and Eve persuaded Adam to eat the forbidden fruit, God was angry, and God cast them aside from the Garden of Eden and sent them to earth and made them mortals. So again, you see, the gardener here is not just any gardener who has created this garden where Marvell is sitting, but it's the God himself. He was such a skillful gardener that he created this new dial. This dial means the circular shape. So again, this dial can be the reference to earth. And he created this dial which was arranged with various flowers and herbs which God created. And from above, the sun could be seen. So all the kind of positive environment a mortal being could have to live there, which God gave them, and all the zodiac signs, all the constellations, all the stars that God gave them. So while sitting here, we as people, when we go back to the reference of the first stanza, what Marvell was talking about, he was talking about we working too much tirelessly with lots of labor to get honors, to bag names and titles and crowns and coronets. So we keep on working like these industrious bees, and we keep on computing our time, we keep on calculating our time, less not thinking about the fact that one day or the other the time is going to end. Time will be up for everyone. There will be a day called death, and there will be a last day. So the best way to be in this garden called earth, the best way to enjoy your life here, is to be among these flowers and fruits, is to enjoy the nature that God has given us. How could such sweet and wholesome hours be reckoned but with herbs and flowers? So the wholesome hours that God has given us, all the time that God has given us, all the times that he has given us on this earth to live, we must live amidst nature. So the thoughts in the garden is not just within a circle of the garden that Marvell is sitting in. It's not just any garden, but it's a bigger garden. It's a metaphorical garden, the garden which is a metaphor for life itself, or the metaphor for earth itself, where everyone is computing their time just like the bees, and we have to keep on calculating our time because one day our time is going to end. So the time we have, as much as days we have to enjoy it to the full, and that can be done. We can relish all that we have in our lifetime by relishing nature, by being in terms with nature, by being close to nature. So that is all about what Marvell is trying to say in this poetry, and you can unravel layers and layers of meaning from all the lines that he has taken up. And there are so many mythological stories associated with it, be it the story of Apollo, Pan, or the Eden garden. And then there are various symbols, image of the garden in a larger perspective, and the various similes and metaphors he has used, where he compares the body to the vest, or where he compares the soul to a bird, and many more. So keep reading between the lines, and that was all about this poem. I'm sure you all must have understood it. So till then, bye. Thank you.